There we are. We are live. This is Vivian Dudrow, Senior Editor with Ignatius Press, and I'm honored to be hosting today Roseanne Sharp from Bethlehem Books. And Roseanne is going to tell us all about their marvelous books, chapter books for children. And Roseanne, tell us a little bit, what is the mission of Bethlehem Books?
Well, our mission is to bring back good children's literature from the golden age of children's literature, which is about from 1920 to 1960. There's just a very prolific outpouring of good children's books at that time. And we started discovering them back in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, we began publishing them. We would find the authors, or if the authors were deceased, we would find their heirs, their rights holders, and we would bring them back for people. So we've always been on this mission to find good books. And because people were having trouble finding them, the ones that we recommended, we started to bring some back, the ones that we could.
And many of these books and authors were very popular, award-winning,
yes,
in their day, and were featured in libraries, in the juvenile section of libraries and school libraries. And so the fact that they fell out of popularity, or however you want to look at that,
right,
they began to disappear, right?
They did, yes. My mother was at the Portland State Library in Oregon, and she was trying to find The Mitchells by Hilda von Stockham. And they said, we couldn't possibly keep that book in our library because the family has 5 children.
Yeah.
So that's...
Oh, good heavens.
I know, that's where it went, you know? So they just started falling by the wayside because they were no longer acceptable. But these were the books that were brought out by mainstream publishers. These were secular publishers bringing out books by Christians, by Catholics. They're just good books. They're well written. They had good ideas. They came from a Christian worldview. Because we don't quite realize how much things have changed in the past 50 years. Because there was so much just understanding that, you know, the ends do not justify the means. That was just accepted. That good triumphs over evil was accepted. That virtue is a good, positive thing, which is necessary for adult life. These things were just accepted. And we just have sort of gone away from that in the last 50, 70, 100 years.
Right. So speaking of Hilda von Stockham, she was a very prolific author and an artist, a Dutch woman from England. And your first book was by her, right?
Well, it was our third book.
Oh, your third book.
Yes, it was a picture book, but it's also a chapter book. It's this one, Day on Skates. I don't know if you can see that. And it's beautifully illustrated. And it won a Newbery honor. Well, it was a runner-up to the Newbery Award, which had only started just about 10 years earlier than that. 1922 was a very key year for children's literature. That's when Mae Massey started editing for Doubleday, and she started one of the first of 3 children's departments in America. Before that, it just didn't exist. And then this was written in 1935, and so it was given a Newbery honor later because they didn't have the Newbery honor at that time, but it was just, it was so well written.
Right.
Hilda von Stockham wanted to actually have something for the artwork, but there wasn't a prize for children's book artwork until 1938. So she was a little too early. Just a few years.
The garbage truck just arrived. So if there's noise in the background, that's what it is. So those illustrations, Rose, can you open up a page there and hold it close to the camera to see her illustrations are absolutely charming. Look at that. The story is set in Holland.
Yes, where she was born. She was born in Holland, and she lived in Canada. She lived in the United States, and then she lived in England at the last part of her life.
Right. So, and as you say, she was published by a secular publisher. Did you say it was Doubleday?
This one, I think, I'm not sure which one this was. She wanted it to be Viking, but Mae Massey wasn't in the office when her husband came by with the manuscript, so Viking missed this one.
But Viking did many of her others, right?
Yes. So Mae Massey got onto her, and they worked together. So.
Yes, for many fruitful years. So let's move on to some of those other titles. You mentioned The Mitchells.
Yes.
This is a chapter book for a little bit older children, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would. although it's also a great read aloud for families of all
Yes.
ages.
Yes.
And but we give an age recommendation on the back of all of our books, and it's also on our website. We say ages 10 and up, but this would be enjoyed by ages 4 and up if it's read aloud.
Right. And
So
that's a series, right? There's 3 books all
there's 3
together.
books. So second, third.
And this is set during World War II and shortly thereafter. And this family is very much involved in the war effort with
in the United States.
Yes, in the United States. Now, she had a book about World War II, 2 books about World War II set in Holland, right?
Yes, that's The Winged Watchman. It's been one of our most popular books since we brought it back into print. It's just an incredible story and illustration of the Dutch resistance.
Yes, I love that book. And all my children love that book. And yes, the Dutch resistance, these people who heroically harbored Jews, harbored Allied troops or forces, the downed pilot and so on, all in their Windmill, which is why it's called the Winged Watchman, right?
That's correct.
And the windmills, I guess, in Holland actually did play a key role in the Dutch's resistance to the Nazi occupation, right?
Yes, they did. They would set the wings at certain angles to
send messages,
message certain things that were going on.
And it's just such a beautiful image, isn't it? Winged Watchman, because of course, winged watchmen are also what? Angels.
That's right.
Yes, it's a beautiful book. It's very poignantly told.
Yes.
And then the other series that you published by her, tell us about that.
The Bantry Bay series. This is set in Ireland. She spent the latter half of her childhood in Ireland, and this was before she herself was Catholic. She became Catholic as an adult. But these books are very much Catholic Ireland, and she herself became Catholic. This is the second book, but she herself became Catholic before writing the 3rd book. So it's a neat part of her own history that's written into these stories.
And anyone with any Irish heritage at all will love these books.
Yes.
They follow the adventures of a family. Those 3 books she held up, Cottage of Bantry Bay, Francie on the Run. They're just delightfully told, the adventures of these children. And these are children, with dirt floor houses and running around barefoot and having all these adventures. They're wonderful, wonderful books. And Bantry Bay is in County Cork, right?
I believe so.
Any of you Irish lovers out there are going to love these books.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to Kate Sarady. Now, I was introduced to Kate Sarady as a child. Didn't she write The Good Master?
Yes. Yes, she did. That's one of our favorite books. It is now in print at this moment. But
not by you, right?
Not by us, by another publisher, but we're so excited because all the publishers are going through their backlists right now and getting a lot of these old titles by these great authors back in print. So I hope
they have you to thank in part for blazing this trail, and scripping and scraping to do it. And so God bless you for blazing this trail, because I think what's happening is the pendulum is turning a little bit now. People want wholesome, but not sappy. But
no. We have trouble with sappy. We don't like sappy.
No one likes sappy. Wholesome stories that give people hope that goodness is worth it.
Exactly, and boy, do we need that right now today. We do, and children naturally are inclined that way. So this simply gives them a world that it broadens their world in that and confirms that goodness that's already there in them.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And so Kate Sarady, she wrote this book, The Good Master, which is set in Poland. I loved it as a child. And then you've brought out by her Philomena.
Yes. So this is our edition of Philomena. It's also it's set in Hungary. And it's about a girl from the country who goes to the city to work as a servant, which was very much at the time of her childhood and before that was just accepted. And it's a very, very touching story. It's interesting because we don't have anything like that today. In America, we never did. So it's a very fun story.
I might have misspoke. Maybe The Good Master also is set in Hungary. If I remember correctly, it's Magyar people. In any case, these are set in Eastern Europe.
Yes.
And do you have any others by her?
We don't, no, but we like all of her books. So we believe if you're looking for good books, you find authors that you like, and then you just look for their books everywhere. You know, the internet's made that so much easier, but at thrift stores and secondhand stores, you can still find these good books. So make a list and start looking.
And speaking on the internet, people can find you on the internet, right? Where
That's
can
correct.
they find you?
www.bethlehembooks.com.
Okay, everybody, make a note of that. When you go to their website, you're just going to be amazed at how many wonderful. You won't even be able to decide which ones. You'll want them all. So, well, let's move on to the author, Maureen Daly. Now, this is an author I am not familiar with, but I remember when you brought out The Small War of Sergeant Donkey, but I didn't read it at the time. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So this book is just a very simple story, but it's interesting because, again, it's World War II and it's in Italy. So it's when the Allies are fighting to take back Italy. So it's about a local boy and his donkey and his relationship with the American soldiers. So again, it's very simple, but it's just such a enjoyable read. It's unusual. I mean, we always say if you want to find out about a subject or about a time in history, get a good children's book because it's the most distilled, it's the most well-written and concise book that you'll find.
That's right. Now, you publish a lot of historical fiction.
Yes, we do.
And I think on your website, you even have it categorized for the historical period that story is set in, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do the timeline. So if you're studying a certain time in history, if you're homeschooling or if you're just interested or your children are studying at school, then you can find a historical fiction book, which just brings that time alive. These are by authors who really did good research. They were very interested in history themselves, and they just bring a beautiful story, an interesting story to life.
Well, that brings me to one of my favorite authors of yours, Alan French.
Yes.
My absolute favorite book, Rolf and the Viking Bow.
This one's your absolute favorite?
Yes. Oh my goodness, I love that story.
Me too.
Oh my goodness. And was that was one of your early books, right?
Yeah. This is our very first one. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was written in 1904.
My boys loved that book. I think they reread it multiple times. It then led to a fascination with Vikings, which are kind of all the rage right now. There's a Viking show on one of the special channels, Okay. But it led my sons to want to read the Viking sagas because Alan French was one of these people who just really got into it, right?
He did. He was a historian. That was his main work, was writing histories. And he would just get so excited by the history he was studying that he'd have to take off his excitement in fiction. So that's where these books came from. Like the story of Rolf is set right at the year 1000 when the whole country of Iceland became Christian. And so you have that tension still between the old ways and the new Christian ways and how those tensions are going to get resolved in each individual. It's very interesting. That's just kind of in the background, but it makes the story, it brings this weight to the story, which just makes it very unique.
Oh, yes. It's a very poignant story. Mm-hmm. And this boy, Rolf, it's really a coming of age story, his kind of transition from adolescence to manhood, the tests that he has to go through, the hardships he has to endure in order to right a wrong. And oh my goodness, it's so good. It's so great. And Alan French wrote other historical fiction too. Do you still have those in print?
We do. We actually just brought them back just the last couple years. They're called The Red Keep and The Lost Baron. And both of them are set in medieval times. And again, they're just, especially if you have readers, boys who like to read or boys who don't like to read, they really bring you in. And there's just, there's an authenticity there, which is not paralleled very often.
Right. Yes, the boys who like to read will gobble these books up. But the boys struggling to read, I had both kinds. And so these books I read aloud. And the ones who couldn't read that well, they got to enjoy them just as much. And then when they could learn to read, they went back and read them on their own.
Yeah.
And what, you know, at that point about your timeline. So whether you're homeschooling or not, you know, when you're studying a period of history, it helps children so much to have them read historical fiction set in that time at the same time they're studying a particular period, because it just makes it more real. It might seem ironic to read fiction to make things real, but that's in fact what fiction does, right, Rose? Isn't that what good fiction does?
That's what good fiction does. And the thing is that it allows the children or the reader to understand the mindset in a way that just reading facts will not. So
I think Maria Montessori famously said, teaching just facts sows confusion, but teaching relationships sows understanding. Yes,
that we would agree very much with that. And also with Charlotte Mason, who was an English educator in the late 1800s, early 1900s. She talks about living books, and the living books is, she means like where facts and like history, for instance, is set down as narrative. So in biography and in historical fiction, and where good fiction is very well told and concise and contains ideas which feed the mind. Now, this is something which we've gotten a little bit away from because we focus more on emotion, but it's the ideas behind these books that we've done, and so many from this time period, that really feed your mind. They ignite your imagination. They touch your heart. They change the way you look at the world.
Yes, and your place in it. Because even though this drama might be going on in someone else's life, now vicariously you are experiencing that person's experience. And now your world and how you respond to it just got bigger or deeper or something, you know?
Exactly. I lent this book to a monk, a Benedictine monk friend of mine. And after he read it, he said, you know, I find myself thinking about Rolf and when he was struggling, at the moments when I'm struggling, and kind of how Rolf handled it. And it's like, it's helpful to think about that. And it was just, you know, so I tried not to say I told you so, but I think I did.
Yeah. So this is how the communion of saints works. And even though Rolf is not a historical person, it's based, Alan French was the man who wrote Rolf, was a real person. And so the communion that you're experiencing with really good books is with the author.
Yes.
And now the author, through his imagination and creating these other characters, there is a real communion going on with the true, the good, and the beautiful through an artfully told story. So Astrid Lindgren. Everyone knows her. She's the Pippi author, right?
She's the Pippi author, yes. We did another one of her books.
I know. Tell us about it.
Okay, this one's called Happy Times in Noisy Village. And it's actually a sequel to Noisy Village. I think it's just called The Children of Noisy Village. And that's in print by another publisher. But this is one that we have the rights to, and we love these particular set of stories because they just she can write from a child's perspective and pull it off. I don't know how she does it, but I actually believe that a 9-year-old is telling this story. And it's just very fun, family-oriented story set in Sweden. She's a Swedish author. And I mean, I think the Pippi Longstocking books are still in print. I know they are.
Oh, yes, and they're very popular. I think there's been movies made and all the rest. And, you know, so just so our viewers, if there are any out there, know, you know, the Pippi books are very fantastical, right? Pippi is, but these Children in Noisy Village, these are like real people living family life, having adventures, and it's a multi-generational family, which by the way is more and more becoming normative again, multi-generational families. And how everyone is helping and loving and serving one another. But they're still kids, right? So they get into mischief and they get into conundrums, and they're so charming. In fact, when you guys released Happy Times in Noisy Village, and I read it, and my kids loved it, I went out and found The Children of Noisy Village, the prequel to this. And so that's what good books do, right? Like you said earlier, you find an author you like, and now you sort of follow that thread, and you find and maybe it's not published by you, but you know,
it doesn't matter. Our whole goal has been to let people know that there are so many good books and bring back the ones that we are able to. but there are just so many. It's unbelievable. Once you start, you won't believe how many you can find. Just from Astrid Lindgren herself, we have on the front of our book, you probably can't see it very well, but we have a list of a lot of the other titles she wrote. And we do that with almost all of our books. So our books are an informational source that way as well.
So that's really helpful to the reader to be able to then see, well, what else did this author write, and can I still get that? Especially once you find something children really, really like, you just want to keep feeding that fire as much as you can. All right, Mariel Trevor, what a woman!
What a woman!
Yes,
she wrote so many. She's a English author. She's deceased now, but she was a convert to the faith. She wrote a lot about Cardinal Newman for adult books. She wrote adult historical fiction and children's historical fiction and just fiction, which is what this series, the Lutsenstein Chronicles, are. They are based on her and a friend. They had childhood make-believe worlds. They each had an island or a country, and then they would make up stories about the people in those countries. So that was the inspiration for this series. There's 4 books in it. We have them all as ebooks, and we're bringing them back as print books as well, and hopefully audio soon. But
those would make great audiobooks, just because there's a lot of adventure and intrigue and going on in those stories. And you mentioned her love of Cardinal Newman. I think she wrote a substantial biography of Cardinal Newman for adults.
Yes, she did. And also on St. Philip Neri, who started the Oratorians, which, of course, Cardinal Newman was part of.
She was really a formidable intellect. I think she was educated at Cambridge or something like this. And yet this lively imagination. You know, another book of hers, because she's English, she wrote that one that goes through time.
Yes, Sun Slower, Sun Faster. We have that one as an ebook, and we're just finishing the audio. So it's going to be on Audible and iTunes as an audio download, which I think will be fantastic because it's a time travel.
It's a time travel. These 2 children travel back to different historical times, and that's a very cool book. And her Rose Round, do you still have that in print?
We're bringing it back. It's very interesting. With the last 3 years, we've actually bringing back titles that we had at the beginning. We've kept a lot of books in print, but some of them we've had to let go, but we've renewed contracts for the Rose Round, and that will be coming back.
You know, one of her themes and is sort of the wounded hero.
Yes.
The person who, the wound in their life, whatever form that takes, a physical infirmity or maybe an emotional, psychological infirmity, is the portal of grace in that person's life and is the means by which God works, and not just in that person's life, but somehow in the lives of others. She's really taken by this theme, isn't she?
Yes, she is. Yes, the wounded hero and orphans. They show up in a lot of her books.
And Charles Dickens, obviously, the orphan. I mean, just about all his characters are orphaned. But you know, even though that seems like just a fact of life, some people are orphaned, some people are disabled or whatever, these things have spiritual significance.
Yes, they do.
And the authors who really have a deep understanding of the human heart, they're moving on multiple levels here. And this is why reading, you know, all this emphasis on STEM education. Look, I get it. You need math. Everybody needs math. Everybody needs, fine. But what feeds the soul and helps you learn what it means to be a human being are the humanities. And among those are the great books. And I would say what you're doing, Rose, at Bethlehem Books, giving great books to children, is feeding the souls, hearts, and minds and imaginations of children.
Yes, that is why we're doing it, because we love children. Children are intelligent. They're completely worth it. And I mean, each individual child is just hungry for the truth, hungry for truth and love together, which in these books, it comes in a completely accessible, non-threatening way. And we also have found that these books and other ones like them bring healing to adults as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
The adults are going to love these books even more than the children, because the adults have enough life experience to be able to be touched in ways that children who have not yet lived much life yet, That's
Right.
so true. You're healing adults too. That's so beautiful. All right, one more author before we have to sign off. Eleanor Jewett. Tell us about her.
She is another English author. I don't think she was Catholic. She was probably Anglican. And she wrote The Hidden Treasure of Glaston. And we have another book by her called Big John's Secret. And The Hidden Treasure of Glaston is also a Newbery Honor. So mostly the Newbery Award books get kept in print. But often the Newbery Honor books, especially from this time period in the Golden Age, get left behind. So we've picked up ones that we can. And this one is set in medieval England. And it's a great monastery story. A boy gets it has to do around the time of the murder of St. Thomas Becket. And a boy gets taken to a monastery. And she works in some of the legends of King Arthur, which around Glastonbury, that's where they said he was, he lived or he fought there. So that's very fun. So you really get both England and England's legendary history in this story. It's just a very, very good, fun read.
Yes. And again, so many of your books, Rose, are really appeal to boys. I mean, there's plenty of books out there for girls to read, and girls enjoy these stories too. But I think in a way it's almost harder to find stories that boys will really engage with. And you have so many. In addition, what's that one about the Vikings?
Bjorn the Proud?
Pardon?
Bjorn the Proud?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that still in print?
That one's in print, yes. It's a great story because it's the Vikings hitting, literally, ravaging Catholic Ireland in the early Catholic Ireland. And it's a very, very good story.
Yes, and these children, I think, are taken captives and so on. So, as we said earlier, if you go to their website, www.bethlehem.com, you'll see all these stories cataloged by time period. And you can see very easily how there's so many adventuresome tales that boys will just love, and girls love them too. But I think it's somehow it's a little harder sometimes finding good reading material for boys that doesn't, on one hand, that appeals to their aspirations for manhood, but doesn't glorify gore and I don't know.
Sure, it has nobility. Our books have nobility. Not in an overt, like in your face way, but just built in. This is normal.
Yes, nobility. What a beautiful word. That's exactly right. All of your stories, even the stories like Children of Noisy Village, which are the antics of these young children, there is a nobility to everything you guys publish.
Yes. Thank you. Dignity as well. That's the dignity of the human person is just assumed.
That's right. Okay, so with 3 minutes left, Rose, are there any other authors you would like to mention?
Well, I would like to mention, just because at this moment there are so many good books back in print, and hopefully we can include this down below in the description as well, but there are just other authors with other publishers. So we hope to have a list of our authors and other authors. So just a couple names to mention that are back in print through various places. Ingrid and Edgar Delaire. They wrote about.
Oh, they're the people who did all those mythology books.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, they're wonderful. Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and I think they also did biographies, right? Like George Washington and
picture biographies. So they're fantastically accessible.
They're large. They're large format books. They're beautifully illustrated. Yes, those are marvelous books. Thank you for mentioning them. What else?
Marguerite de Angeli is another author.
Yes. The Door in the Wall.
Yes, that's her Newbery Award book. Sydney Taylor, she wrote the All of a Kind Family series. It's about immigrants in New York. Let's see here. Leonard Wibberley, some of his children and grandchildren are bringing back some of his books. It's print on demand on Amazon.
Didn't he do like a sequel to Treasure Island?
Yeah, he did. Flint's Island. We did that early on. I don't know if that one's in print right now. We don't have it anymore. But we should ask them. We should ask the.
Well, what a clever idea, to take a look at one of these stories. Treasure Island is just one of the best stories ever written. And, what an idea to say, well, gee, what happened after that? And for all of you people out there with children who are budding writers, that's a good project to give them. After they've read a book, ask them, what do you think could have happened next? Why don't you try to write that down? See where that takes you.
Exactly. Yes.
So this is great. And by the way, for those of you out there who might be curious, well, what's the relationship between Bethlehem Books and Ignatius Press? Well, Father Fessio, when Bethlehem Books was discovering this new passion to bring these books back into print, they met Father Fessio, who thought it was a great idea and gave him a little boost. Isn't that right, Rose?
That's correct. Yes, we wouldn't be here without Ignatius Press, and we're so grateful.
And Ignatius Press is glad you're here. So with that happy thought, let's conclude. And thank you so much, Rose, for joining me in this interview. I hope that many new followers will be gained for your books, because they're wonderful books. I can't recommend them enough. They played a huge role in my children's upbringing. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.